topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Los Angeles. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Over the last 2 years, we have received so many letters from you about a topic that I had originally never heard of, neuropathy. And we started getting more and more calls, people going, how come you don't do a show on neuropathy? And the more research I did, first of all, it takes a real specialist. So it wasn't easy to find somebody in the Los Angeles area who really understands neuropathy. But we were able to answer all your emails. We were able to find Dr. Kelberman with Westside Wellness Center. Good afternoon, Jason.
Hello there.
I am so glad we found you.
Ditto, because the information needs to get out there. So
there's even doctors who don't understand about.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, very much so. Sad to say, but we're in an age of specialties.
Yes. Tell people about your practice.
So we've been specializing in neuropathy care and even more in peripheral neuropathy care. And so the word neuropathy is a general term for just about any nerve in the body, but peripheral neuropathy means it's toward the ends of the nerves. And, many people say, how come it hit my feet? Well, that's because it's at the ends of the nerves. And it's the farthest away from our heart and the farthest place to get circulation to. And so it is the number one spot, along with hands, for the location.
You started off as a chiropractor. What made you go into neuropathy?
So I treated a lot of athletes. I mean, a lot. And foot problems are common with athletes. And as I got a little bit older, not that you noticed, and the patients got a little bit older, I started to see cases with peripheral neuropathy coming in. And I've been doing high-intensity laser therapy for a couple of decades, and we were able to help several of those cases. And so it piqued my interest. And because I'm a kinesiologist and I love to work on feet. I know it sounds crazy, but it's such an important area of our body. No, I'm not a fetishist. I just know how important feet are to your ankles, your knees, your hips, your back, your shoulder. Everything relies on your feet, to ambulate. So over the years, I just kept learning more and bringing and testing more protocols and modalities and functional medicine into the practice. And after a while, I realized that there was no really good foot rehabilitation. You go to a physical therapist and you're not going to get much foot rehab there. You go to a podiatrist and you're going to get orthotics there. Nothing against orthotics. They're great, but they don't strengthen your feet. So about 10 years ago, I started looking into that. And about 8 years ago, I started getting really serious about creating and patented a method and a piece of equipment to actually strengthen your feet. And bingo, things started to improve again. So basically what I've done is I've accumulated everything in the U.S. that all the doctors told me was great for treating peripheral neuropathy. I tried it all out. I only kept what I found that actually worked. And we're the only office primarily using the foot power rehab system. And it's a patented device, and I'm about to receive a second patent on it. And we're about to introduce it to all the podiatrists in America, as well as all the chiropractors in America. And I'm pretty excited about that, because for the first time, we can help people as they get older maintain good foot strength, which means good balance, which means able to walk and stair climb and not fall. And I know it sounds like, some senior thing, but when you get there, you'll appreciate it. So we're very excited about that. And we help people of all ages who have peripheral neuropathy, not just the seniors.
We got, before the show, we promote your show a couple of days out, and so we started getting emails, but we got an email from somebody who was really excited. They had seen that you were going to be doing a show today, and they said when they're in the bath, when they're taking a shower, they do all they can to keep their balance.
Sure.
And want to know if that's neuropathy.
More than likely. As you can imagine, I can't diagnose through the show, but there's only a couple of things that would create that. One is the feet, and the other would be your brain or your upper cervical spine. So assuming that they are not having any type of dementia, positional, vertigo, whatever issues, it's usually the feet. And, because most showers are fairly slippery, that is a very common issue, and it's a really bad place to fall, because everything is hard in the bathroom. It's the worst place if you're going to fall. There's no carpeting. Everything's hard. You're going to hit a sink, a glass, something really hard. And so be careful. But yes, it's more than likely.
Why does it go to the feet?
So as I mentioned earlier, it's because it's the furthest away. It's the end of the nerves. It's the most vulnerable area. And feet in general are probably the most overlooked area of our entire body.
Yes.
I mean, I'm shocked at what I see some days that people are either, putting up with or dealing with or not getting help with, et cetera. And there are just so many types of peripheral neuropathy. It's one of the reasons why the medical world has so much trouble coming up with their approach to treating it, which at this point is simply medication, gabapentin, Lyrica, or in severe cases, they use intravenous immunoglobulin therapy. But basically, if you don't fit that protocol, and by the way, the drugs don't heal neuropathy, they just make it so that you're not having pain perceived by your brain, if you will. So they're about 20, 25 years out on a new pill that they'll come up with for neuropathy. And I'm actually kind of excited about that, because they've kind of targeted the enzyme that starts to destroy the nerve, but they have no idea how to stop it. So that's for future. It's not going to help us today or even next year, but that's kind of looking forward to the future.
We got a lot of letters from people that have told us, and we've given them your phone number and your address, that their own doctors say there's no cure, there's no relieving of pain for neuropathy, and that basically they have to live with it. That's not true.
Which is terrible. In very rare cases, yes. I've had a couple of cases that even I couldn't help. It happens. Okay, there are some people who have waited way too long. Things have degenerated so far that they're not going to come back. Nerves are the slowest healing tissue of the human body: brain, spinal cord, and nerves. And muscles, tendons, ligaments, joints, they rehab much faster than any nerve will. And so it's not unusual to have occasionally have a case that I really can't help. That being said, we help probably 85% of the patients that we see significantly. All right. Meaning we got them out of pain. they're walking, they're back in their lives again, they're able to enjoy. What I started also doing was implementing my foot strengthening device, Foot Power, in the home as an ongoing therapy. So they get much longer lasting results and capacity for improvement. So we're really excited about that potential, and it makes a big difference.
What are some of the warning signs? I know there's people right now listening to the show going, do I have neuropathy? What are some of the warning signs that people should consider?
Well, from my point of view, it's how it starts. If for most people, peripheral neuropathy starts slow and gradually gets worse and continues to get worse unless you do something about it. It's a degenerative disease. But if you wake up on Tuesday and you are fine on Monday and you're all numb and tingly and you can't feel your feet, that's to me is a very alarming sign, and you should seek neurologic care immediately. Like that day if possible. That's the clear winner in terms of the warning signs. Everything else has to do with functionality. For example, I can't feel my feet. Should I be driving? Well, if you can't feel the pedal, no. Okay. And yeah, no. And that's a tough one because you can lose your mobility. And, there's a lot of people who take care of themselves that all of a sudden are finding themselves in a situation where, now they're reliant on other people. So whenever possible, let's get to it sooner rather than later.
Here's a great question. It just came in. Thank you so much for someone's finally bringing a show like this. Well, we've been doing this for about 6 or 7 months now, but they want to know, they have nail fungus in their toe. Can that turn into neuropathy? Not
usually, but it's not uncommon for you to have both.
Okay.
But it shouldn't lead to neurologic issues. It's unsightly. It's hard to get rid of, but it should not cause nerve degeneration, which is what peripheral neuropathy is.
How painful is this?
Neuropathy?
Yes.
Oh gosh, everybody's different. On a scale of 0 to 10, some people come in as 10. Others come in anywhere. Yeah. So imagine it changes your life. So you can't walk because it hurts like a mofo, right? Pardon my French. You can't sleep because it hurts through the night. So the moment sleep gets interrupted, that's always going to make everything worse because that's where our body actually regenerates and heals from the day. So I know many people out there are going, yeah, but I get up to pee twice a night. Yeah, and that's something that will have an effect, somewhere down the line. So that's my answer to that question.
What is your approach? Why do you get better results when you're treating peripheral neuropathy?
Good question. Let me explain it this way. The dilemma with dealing with peripheral neuropathy and neuropathies in general are that many of us are very different. How do I explain this? It's not as simple as I have high blood pressure or I don't have high blood pressure. Okay. You can get neuropathy from 5 different sources and 100 different ways, to the degree that whoever you see properly examines you and then treats you according to what started your neuropathy. And I'll give you an example. You're going to get better results. So let's talk about this. All right, here's a case. Younger person, let's say. Most people who are younger, if they're not diabetic, they're toxic. And they're having some kind of a toxic syndrome that's actually damaging their nerves. So let's put that off for a moment, okay? Somebody has a lumbar disc problem with sciatica. Okay, they fix the sciatica, but now they still have nerve problems going down the leg that triggers it. Okay, now let's put somebody who's got flat feet. Now let's add somebody who's got plantar fasciitis, pain in the bottom of their feet. Here's the point I want to make. Once the nerves are involved, it's going to affect the muscles. Remember that muscles move bones. So if you're having muscle weakness, you're going to have problems with joints. Okay. So you're going to start having secondary or tertiary pains and other problems that were not from the original neuropathy. So it's not unusual where I see plantar fasciitis, which is horrible pain in the bottom of your feet because the muscles got weak and couldn't support the structure, and the fascia exploded because it couldn't take the load anymore. So I hope that I'm trying to get the point across correctly in that there are many different ways. Some people oversimplify it by saying it's a circulation problem. Well, yeah, but what caused the circulation problem? Okay. Was it diabetes? Was it problems with the veins? Was it lymphedema? Was it something else? Okay. To the degree you can isolate all of those particulates with each person, you get better results. You just do. And in terms of rehabbing feet, I'm going to just say there's nothing anywhere near effective as the foot power strengthening system.
So walking doesn't really.
It's just a miracle that they can get the power back and start walking and balancing again. All right. That's how bad it can be. Yeah.
Okay. This is really probably the most important question I'll ask you. And by the way, Dr. Kilberman's with us every month, and we actually replay his show once a month. But this is probably the most important question is you're having great success with this. What happens if someone does not take care of this, Dr. Kilberman?
Well, like I said earlier, it's a degenerative disease, so it doesn't get better. You know, those 5 favorite words, maybe it will get better. It doesn't happen. Yeah. The only thing I will say, not everybody gets pain and burning and cramping. Some people just get numb. Okay. People who are just numb can get along better, in my opinion, and probably theirs, than people who have pain, burning, and cramping all the time, because the numbness doesn't keep them awake at night, et cetera. So again, each person is unique, and they have to address their own situation, but it never gets better on its own. The sooner you intervene, the better you off. In some cases, we just have to stop the process to get them better, and others we can regenerate and fix the problem.
What do you do when someone walks in your office and you think they could possibly be suffering from neuropathy? What do you do? What's the first thing you do?
Well, I do a complete comprehensive evaluation on every patient that we see. We do a full neurologic workup, isolating what type of neuropathy is, and I'll oversimplify it by just saying small fiber neuropathy and large fiber neuropathy. Small fiber neuropathy is typically more of the metabolic diabetic type, and large fiber neuropathy is more the spinal disc problem. But you can get diabetics that have both. You can have a variety of different combinations of nerves. So once I've done that, I have an idea whether it's a mild, moderate, or severe case, how much weakness they have, how difficult they are for balancing, what muscles are involved, and through the history, I also know what got them to that state. So that's basically what I do on everybody. We don't shortcut the process at all. It's important to do a thorough job.
Do you have to alter or change their diet?
Sometimes, especially the diabetics. Unfortunately, a lot of times diabetics are given medication and they're not given nutritional counseling. And so they continue to eat as much sugar and carbs as they used to, but because they're taking medication, their blood test looks better. Okay. But, we're not treating a blood test, we're treating people. So usually what that leads to is more medication and more medication and more medication, because they're not working with the problem. They're, ignoring it and taking drugs.
Well, I wanted to kind of save this for the last.
Okay.
We have more and more doctors like yourself that want to do a show in other cities and other states. So I've really been doing a lot of due diligence. There's a lot of gimmick products out there for neuropathy, and you see people writing how they didn't work for them.
Right.
Are you seeing that?
No, not only seeing it, but I've looked at it, purchased them. I check everything out. I've been researching this for a long time, and we don't leave any stones unturned. So, okay, the most common ones are B12 deficiency, alpha lipoic acid deficiency, omega-3, green lip muscle stuff. Some of it does help if you're in that category. So here's an example. Let's say I'm a diabetic and I'm on metformin. Okay, well, metformin is a typical drug used for mild diabetes, but it's been known to deplete all of your B12 resources. So if the doctor who gave it to you didn't also recommend B12 simultaneously, you're going to be deficient in that. They're very important for nerves. So if you all of a sudden go online and says, hey, here's my B12 alpha lipoic acid, take this, sometimes it does work if you're one of those. Look, somebody must have gotten some good from all of that, or they still wouldn't be running it, right? But the percentages are smaller. Okay, the hype of the marketing is enormous, and even I have to sit through a 30-minute webinar to just find out what it is that they're selling. And sometimes I do that, and sometimes, I just can't waste the time. But whether it's a low-level light therapy or a vibrational therapy or a support hose, compression pants, what else have I seen? Grounding blankets, heavy blankets. I mean, and it goes on and on and on. And my answer is, every now and then you do get the right thing for what you got, and it works. And otherwise,
Hey, I want to get...
that's a medical term, by the way.
There's in the chat
grade
line.
1.
How do you spell that, Dr. Kilberman? So if you look over in the chat line, Jefferson, what are things to look for to know if it's coming on?
Oh, you want me to look at the chat here?
This is from Jefferson.
Oh, if neuropathy is actually coming on?
Yeah.
Well, any of the symptoms, whether it's pain, burning, numbness, tingling, cramping, any of those. Some people say it starts in one foot and then it moves to the other. Some people get it simultaneously. It varies greatly. But mostly something that does not go away is a pretty good sign that you should get it checked. Okay.
Tell people how they can reach you, Dr. Kelberman.
Well, here in the office, you may see the phone number here, 310-268-8008. You can also email me directly at drkelberman@wwc.care. I definitely answer all of my emails.
And don't let it go. Don't let this go. We're trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Dr. Kelberman will.
This is what we do to change people's lives. So if you need a little help changing yours back to where it used to be, or even better, this is definitely the place to come.
Well, Dr. Kilberman will be back again with us next month. We'll be running his show again next week. We will let you know. Dr. Kilberman, I'm so glad we've got you. You should have been a professor. You are a great teacher.
Well, I used to be a teacher. Thank you very much.
It's very obvious.
I actually, up until before the pandemic, I also taught relicensing hours for doctors of chiropractic here in Southern California. So, I love to teach. I kind of miss it.
Very obvious.
It's fun. Yeah.
We'll see you next month, Dr. Kilberman.
Excellent. And for everybody out there,
we're going to go to a short break, and we'll be right back.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
And we are back. I got to tell you, I am so excited about our next expert. We were inundated with your mail asking us, why aren't you, especially with the fires that have gone on, with the rain, how come you don't have a public adjuster on there? And listen, there's a lot of public adjusters out there, but it's so important when you have a show called Ask the Experts that you find the right one. And I have spent a lot of time on the phone with our expert. Um, I cannot wait for the show to launch. Let me introduce you to our new expert, Robert Crown of Crown Public Adjusting.
How do you do, Stephen?
Hi, Robert. We finally get to see eye to eye.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
We are so excited about your show. I cannot believe we have been getting, we really target California, but somehow in our marketing, we got so many letters from Arizona and Nevada, people excited about this show. I guess, first of all, tell us about Crown Public Insurance Adjusting.
We are known as Crown Public Adjusting or Crown Adjusting. I've been a public adjuster for quite a long time, almost 40 years, and I've worked with larger firms, smaller firms, and launched my own firm about 12 years ago. We service policyholders after unfortunate property loss events. And I would say that the brunt of our time really is in introducing ourselves to people at perhaps the worst time, and do so with a great deal of care and concern for where they're at, because they are probably overwhelmed very quickly. And this show is targeted to an audience that probably does include people in Southern California, but I've been through a number of firestorm events that concern, hundreds, and in this case, thousands of people.
It's amazing that about 15 years ago, I had a real bad leak, and I actually tried to handle it myself. And I was not happy with how much the insurance company was offering me, but I felt like I had no choice. And a friend of mine said, how come you don't get a public adjuster? Robert, I had never heard of a public adjuster. And this is like one of the great, I know you know this, but this is one of the most important things about this show, that people don't know there are companies like yours that can make the biggest difference. And I got to tell you, when I did get a public adjuster, I got $65,000 more than they were originally offering me. And I got to tell you, I am a big fan of public insurance adjusters.
That's a nice compliment. I think for many, it's very often a misunderstood profession. It really does embody a number of different disciplines, certainly the knowledge of what an insurance policy is. And it is essentially a contract, but you do not have to be a lawyer to understand it. Public adjusting is really unique to the intersection of construction, the practice of dealing with insurance companies, and in particular, public adjusters are required throughout most states, I think 47, to be individually licensed by the state departments of insurance. We're also governed by a number of standards established through our trade organization. And there are continuing education classes, but I think the best education of all is the experience that you get representing and advocating for consumers. You really have to start with their unique situation and the kind of policy they have, because everything hinges on your own individual coverage.
I got to tell you, we got a lot of letters. This is probably going to be our number one show in California, just based on the letters. But I got to tell you, a lot of people who wrote us lost their insurance. And it's really sad. And it seemed like some of the people were surprised that their insurance was no longer. Are you seeing a lot of that?
It's well, California is going through yet another series of traumas. The last 3 to 5 years have been about requiring the underwriters to look very carefully at the risk. And while premiums have been going up in the last 2 years alone, a number of insurers have decided to pull out of California. This presents a real dilemma for people who own homes, whose life and their legacy is tied up in the ownership of a home. And there's a lot of advocacy that's going on a policyholder level, making sure that these insurance companies don't necessarily pull up stakes and leave, because it's one thing to pay your premium for 30 to 40 years, and another, all of a sudden, when you probably need it the most, your insurance company decides to drop you, and then you're dealing with a number of other carriers who come into California, and they essentially are the insurance of last resort. But for many who don't know what public adjusters do, it's probably important to focus on the mechanics of what we do. And if we're talking about Southern California, it's somewhat unprecedented in the sense that when a FEMA event occurs, the rules change a little bit, and the insurance companies are held to a higher standard, just based on recent legislation over the last 3 years. So,
Are you surprised, Robert? A lot of homeowners don't really know their policy.
No, not really. Like so many things, we know we need insurance. We rely on our agent to understand, to better understand what they're selling us. And when we buy a home or we have a home, sometimes the mortgage company will promote a particular insurance company. Sometimes the loan is sold. The homeowner is notified that they need to go with a different carrier, and then the market becomes it's a shrinking market. No, it's not entirely surprising that people don't understand property insurance, because most people don't read it. They don't read the policy until they have to.
Robert, tell people, you think about damage to your home, you think about winds, storms, fires, but there's other areas, though, also that you work in.
Well, any claim for which there is property coverage, water damage, wind, hail, fire. There's also flood coverage, but that's through National Flood. And there's any number of situations where you could insure for tree fall, but then you unfortunately have a tree fall, and you find in the fine print that the coverage is quite limited if a tree happens to fall on your roof. So everybody doesn't really know the ins and outs of property coverage, except when they talk to a licensed public adjuster, because we've dealt with these situations. Sometimes it is unfortunate. We are surprised ourselves that the insurance company is taking an adversarial position on what we believe to be an all-risk policy, and then lo and behold, they are dealing with an objection by their own insurance company. I talk to people all the time, and I ask them to immediately ask the adjuster on the other end of the phone to put it in writing, because frequently the people who answer these phones or do their preliminary inspections are tasked with only one aspect of the claim, and that's the first phase. So the insurance companies have to tell you what's covered and what isn't, even if you don't know.
How is a public adjuster different, say, than an independent adjuster who comes out to survey the damage?
Well, it's a good point and a great question, because it's important to make a distinction. Public adjusters are the only licensed individuals that are recognized by the insurance industry as advocates solely for the consumer. We do not work for insurance companies. Insurance companies have their own adjusters that are frequently referred to as staff adjusters. And then there are other adjusters called independent adjusters who work for private firms that service different insurance companies, particularly when their own staff adjusters are swamped or they don't have the personnel to properly service. They will go to an independent adjusting firm, and some of them are quite large. They are doing the same thing the insurance company adjusters are, but they're under contract. They work under the insurance company's license, and in terms of accountability, there's another layer that in many ways becomes a protective layer for the insurance company. And we frequently will remind the insurance company that their independent adjuster is also responsible to deal with the claim in the same manner that a staff adjuster would be inclined. But in this situation in Southern California, there are adjusters coming in from all over the country. So
we got a text from Howard in Malibu. How do your fees? How do you get paid?
Public adjusters typically work on a contingency fee portion of the claim. In other words, excuse me one second. Can you still hear me?
I hear you fine.
So they will work on a percentage of the recovery and make sure that the consumer does everything that they need to do to prove their loss and damages. Typically, the fees are predicated on anywhere from a 5 to 15% contingency, but they are really based on when the public adjuster is hired. And I personally start with the type of coverage my client has. And a lot of the folks in Southern California, just right out of the gate, probably don't have enough coverage. That's what we call underinsurance. And that is, unfortunately, after a disaster where everything is gone, it's more common than not.
It's what you do, Robert, I think is amazing, because a guy like me, I don't know anything about plumbing. I don't know anything about roof leaks. I don't know anything about flooding. I don't know what the value is. You do. You know what the value of all this is. So when should a person bring in a public insurance adjuster?
Well, in
I don't
many
know
cases,
what's fair and what's not fair.
Well, there are many people that have already engaged a public adjuster in Southern California, either because they were approached by one or somebody recommended that they have one. Many public adjusters want to be involved in the beginning, in part to make sure the consumer doesn't make mistakes, but also because the value added starts with knowing what to say, when to say it, and how to prepare a claim. I think it's equally important that people really understand how their coverage is written, because a large public adjusting firm, with all due respect to the people that have been doing this for a really long time, they sometimes will have a sales force that is out there talking to people and, very willing and ready to be hired immediately. And I think, generally speaking, they're all well-intentioned, but someone needs to know going in, hey, if you're underinsured, it's very likely that we're going to cost you money. And that's probably the case no matter what, but somebody that really understands what the cost of reconstruction repair are in Southern California would know that. And I think it would behoove them to share that information with the person ahead of time. Also, in a FEMA event, any money that the consumer collects on their own before they engage a public adjuster is really not subject to the public adjuster's fee.
Wow. We've been hearing from property owners in LA who don't have enough insurance. Can you help them?
Well, in terms of how the underwriter established the damages, sometimes people
Yeah.
will they'll buy a new home and they signed an application, and the agent determined how much coverage they needed, and lo and behold, it wasn't written properly. That becomes a more of a legal question in terms of whether or not you can get the insurance company or the agent that wrote that policy to approach them in a way that technically they could be held responsible for the underwriting. For many, many people, the answer to that question is no. If you're underinsured right out of the gate, it would be optimistic to say to a prospective client, oh, you hire me and I'm going to be able to get you increased limits. I think that would be really over-promising and under-delivering. What we can do, which is what everybody really comes to us for anyway, is we can help you put the claim together to make sure you don't leave money on the table. Because there are many aspects of the coverage. There's the dwelling coverage. There's other structures, which are structures separated by a piece of land. There's personal property coverage. And there's also loss of use and additional living expenses, as well as fair rental value, which we probably could talk a little bit about on today's show, if you like.
We have about 6-7 minutes. I know I wanted to ask you this. If a person doesn't have, say, enough insurance, how are they going to pay the public adjuster to rebuild their home?
It's going to be very expensive, because ultimately, until you establish your damages, you don't really know what the insurance company is going to pay.
That's
And
true.
I'm talking to people in Southern California that I know personally, who I would love to help them, but I'm not in a rush to help them because it's my belief that they are underinsured. That doesn't mean they wouldn't benefit by me putting the claim together, but I'm going to have to charge them for that. So the answer
Right.
is, how do they pay you? If you engage a public adjuster on a percentage, and that public adjuster does recognize that their fee is going to be a significant expense to a prospective client because they don't have enough insurance to begin with, that's a conversation they should have with the person before they get hired. Because you can always make adjustments to your fee to make it more reasonable for a client that's going through just a monumental undertaking, and having to worry about what they're going to be able to pay for at the end of the day, because it costs a lot of money to rebuild a house, the architecture and engineering, all of the costs associated with cleanup. So the quick and simple answer is, how are they going to pay? If they engage a public adjuster, the PA is entitled to a fee as a result of hiring the public adjuster. So the better answer is, how much are they going to be paying the public adjuster, and can they really afford it? That's not a conversation I shy away from, because I've been doing this for a really long time. So I do make adjustments to my fee that take into consideration and recognize that my client, and if they hire me, they're going to be my client, that I'm really going to be able to take good care of them, because they're going to be getting the best representation possible, and I'm going to make sure that the insurance company is paying what they should.
Robert, are there a lot of scams going on now with what's going on in Southern California?
I don't want to cast any dispersions on the number of people that are out there offering their services. You can always check the credentials of a licensed public adjuster. In the age of social media, everybody's got a social profile. You can also check with the Department of Insurance. A great resource for many people is a private nonprofit called United Policyholders. A number of us around the country, and particularly on the West Coast, are members of that organization to help others basically educate consumers that are about to go through this. And they also have an Ask an Expert portion of their organization. It's totally non-for-profit. And sometimes when I will address questions through UP, and people want to thank me, of course, and I'm not holding them to an obligation to pay me anything, because we do that as a volunteer. But that's a great website for policyholder survivors, because they've got an interface that really answers a great many of the questions that people have after a large loss. So that's I think the website is www.up.org or unitedpolicyholders.org. And I've been doing this long enough to tell a number of stories of how that organization got started. Needless to say, it was from a disgruntled State Farm adjuster, a whistleblower, who decided that something needed to be done. And that was after the 1991 East Bay firestorm disaster that destroyed 3,000 homes.
Why should I hire your company?
Well,
you can be humble now.
If you know you need help, people that would elect to work with us wouldn't be guessing about what we do, because we're not a large company. I think we trade on our integrity and our ability to make a difference. We start with where people are at. There's not a tailor-made template for how you can help an insured. In some cases, some of the people that will come to us are already going to have a significant portion of their proceeds. And we would end up working on the difference between what they've already received and what they could receive based on the outer envelope of coverage. I think people would elect to hire us because we take exceedingly good care of our clients by making them a stakeholder in the process from the very beginning. A lot of this is really based on people's expectations. If you start a business relationship, especially in this situation where somebody's lost everything they own, and you don't have your client's confidence, those are not people that I want to represent. Because
how do people, a lot of people are listening on iHeart now and on radio. How do we're scanning right now your phone number and everything, but how do people reach you?
Well, you can find us on the web at crownadjusting.com. We have Google presence. My colleague and I, Joseph Fernandez, are talking to many people, and we have an office in LA now. So we're on the ready to take on business, but we're going to be very mindful of the business we take on, because you can only do so much for so many people.
Yes, right.
And I think that's the danger in this particular industry. Everybody that owns a business knows, you have an obligation to do a great job. And, it's like the hunger that never dies. You want to take on more business, but think about your client and think in terms of their own expectations. If you stay true to your objective, there's a time when you say no, when you can only be of limited help, and that you can't really take on new business.
I'm so glad we have you. And I told you the show goes by really fast. I'm getting texts right now. Why is the show over already? You'll be back though with us next month.
Yes, and we're going to be, talking to a number of people. We're on a couple of forums in Southern California, but people can reach us simply through our website and through Crown Adjusting. Any inquiry that they have will come to us, and they can email me directly at robert@crownadjusting.com, or my associate Joseph Fernandez, Joseph@crownadjusting.com, and we will definitely get back to them. Most of what we're doing is sending out, at least initially, a survey that allows us to get a really good read of where people are at in the process. And so that when we talk to them, we already know where what their coverage is, who their insurance company is and where they're at in the process so that we can follow up with them.
Robert, thank you so much, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure.
It's Robert Crown with Crown Public Adjusting. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts. Thank you, Rebel.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.